And we are live.
Good evening, everyone. Let's bring the meeting to order. Welcome. Helps, doesn't it? Yeah. I'll start again. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We have a couple of visitors, three visitors, two that are going to make a presentation later from Millard's. Good to see you again. And sir, it's good to have you here. One is better than none in our audience, so you're very special tonight. So with that, has attendance been taken?
Roll's been taken.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to read out some rules of procedure. I'd like to remind members of the committee and staff that our viewing public of the electronic participation policy for virtual meetings. Staff and delegates are reminded to keep their video and microphones off until requested by the moderator or members of the committee. All rules for delegations under the city's procedural bylaw continue to apply. Further, in the event a connection or service interruption that occurs that affects quorum, we may recess the meeting for up to 15 minutes to regain quorum. If quorum is not achieved, then the meeting will be adjourned. The full corporate policy 50 regarding electronic virtual participation in meetings is available online to review. So members of committee, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest for items appearing on the agenda this afternoon? I see no hands up, so thank you very much. Separation of items for consideration, consent items for discussion purposes. Please note that item 511-2021 audited consolidated financial statements 2022368 is already separated as there is a presentation associated with this item. Members of the committee, are there any other items for consideration or consent items that you wish to separate for discussion purposes? Councillor Martin.
Yes, 5.1.2 and 5.2.2.
What was that last one, please?
5.2.2.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Any others? See no hands up. So could I get a mover and seconder of all the items for consideration and consent not separated for discussion purposes?
So moved.
Is that Councillor Carpenter? Thank you very much, sir. And Councillor Martin is seconding. So can I get my notes ready here? And that is that what's moved is that all items for consideration and consent 5.1 to 5.2 not separated for discussion purposes be approved. With no further separations, I will now call the vote on all items for consideration and consent that were not separated for discussion. Melanie, please.
So the items subject to the vote are as follows. Item 5.1.3 municipal property tax software replacement. Item 5.2.1 quarterly status report of contracts awarded, and 5.2.3 the minutes.
Thank you very much, Melanie. So now, we better do the vote first, huh? Getting ahead of myself.
And all items not separated for discussion purposes carries unanimously on a recorded vote. Those voting in favor, Councillor Martin, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sicoli, Councillor Udley, Councillor Carpenter, and Councillor Van Tilburg.
Thank you very much. On to 4.1. We are delighted to see our friends from Millard's here, Julie Bates and Jennifer Chowan from Millard's Chartered Professional Accountants. Would you please come forward and introduce yourselves and begin your presentation. You will have 10 minutes to present. Questions can be asked of the consultants during the discussion of item 5.1.1. So whenever you're ready, I'll get the clock going. You give me the nod.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julie Bates from Millard's, and I'm a partner with Millard's. My fellow partner, Jennifer Chowan here. She will present the statements, but first I will go through the report to the Finance Committee. So this report to the members of the Finance Committee has been prepared to facilitate communication between us as the auditors and you as the oversight body of the city. Throughout our report, this is a requirement of our standards to communicate with you. Our report will also outline any responsibilities we have as auditors with relationship to the financial statement audit, our plan, scope, and timing, our independence, and if there are any significant findings throughout the audit. I'm going to skip ahead to the title of the page, Audit Scope and Responsibility. So this is the same independent auditor's report that you will see in the financial statements. So just want to highlight a couple of the paragraphs in here. So in our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the consolidated financial position of the city at December 31st, 2021. And the statements are prepared in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. Our audit was performed in accordance with our generally accepted auditing standards. The report also talks about the responsibilities of management, as management is responsible for the fair presentation of these statements in accordance with the public sector accounting standards. The report then goes into a bit of a laundry list of our responsibilities as auditors. So our main objective is to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the statements present fairly and free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error, and to issue a report that which includes an opinion. In addition, as part of our audit, in accordance with our Canadian generally accepted auditing standards, we exercise professional judgment and maintain our professional skepticism throughout the audit. We also identify and assess the risk of material misstatement, obtain an understanding of internal control, evaluate the accounting policies. We conclude on the appropriateness of management's use of going concern, as well as we evaluate the overall presentation, structure, and content of the statements. We also obtain sufficient audit evidence to support our opinion at the end of the audit. With respect to independence, so we issued a letter back in October of 2021. This is just to ensure that no staff or members or partners at Millards have any existing relationship with staff and management at the city. And to ensure this, we have ensure we can maintain our professional skepticism and our independence throughout the audit. As previously mentioned, the preparation of the statements, including the notes, is the responsibility of management, and we work closely with management throughout the year to ensure that all the disclosures and the transactions are in accordance with these standards. Management is also responsible for selecting the significant accounting policies within those standards, and it is these policies that we use to design our tests to ensure compliance with those standards, as well as to ensure that the transactions are representative of those policies. At the conclusion of the audit, we presented a representation letter to management in a formal letter, which we've received back. And throughout, we also, in the form of questions, inquiries with anything during the audit. In those significant accounting policies, we noted we did not note any significant or unusual transactions. Materiality this year was used at $2.4 million, which was based on 1% of revenue of 2021 as our estimate. This is the number that we feel will affect the users of the financial statements if there are any differences in calculations or estimates recorded. And I can report that we did not have any unadjusted differences this year during the audit. The letter then goes on to just define the definitions of what we consider as an error, meaning unintentional, or if we have any fraud or other irregularities, being intentional. So during the course of our audit, we did not discover any misstatements arising from fraud or other irregularities. Management is also responsible for the design and operation of an effective internal control system. Through our role as auditors, we do maintain an understanding of the overall environment, but we do not issue an opinion on these internal controls. But our standards do require us, if we do find a significant deficiency, that we are to report that. And I can report that during the course of our audit, we did not discover any significant deficiencies. Our inquiries of management and testing of the records did not reveal any fraud or illegal or possible illegal acts. We did not encounter any difficulties in performance of the audit. We had no disagreements with management and have resolved all auditing, accounting, and presentation issues to our satisfaction. And I'd like to report we received excellent cooperation from all the staff and management at the city. The last page of the report just outlines some new standards coming for the public sector accounting standards, and we have already been in discussions with management to ensure that the city is in compliance for when on their effective date. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll provide a brief overview of the consolidated financial statements, which I believe are on page 20 in your package. So as Julie noted, and in our auditor's report, the financial statements are prepared in accordance with Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards, or PSAB. And if we start with the consolidated financial statements, they include the operations of the City of Brantford and also fully consolidate the Brantford Local Housing Corporation, the Brantford Downtown Business Improvement Area, the Brantford Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation, the Brantford Police Services Board, the Brantford Public Library, and the John Noble Home is also consolidated on a proportionate basis. In addition, the Brantford Energy Corporation is accounted for on a modified equity basis, and this means that Brantford Energy Corporation's accounting principles, which are IFRS, aren't adjusted to conform to those of the city, and interorganizational transactions and balances aren't eliminated. To start with the consolidated statement of financial position, the financial assets include cash, receivables, investments, notes receivable, land held for resale, and the city's investment in Brantford Energy Corporation. Liabilities include standard amounts such as accounts payable and accrued liabilities, along with long-term liabilities, and also liabilities that involve the use of estimates. Some of these material items are post-employment and retirement benefits, which are determined by actuarial valuation, landfill closure and post-closure liability, which is determined based on the used capacity relative to the total capacity of the landfill, and contaminated sites liability, which is determined based on the expected remediation costs of contaminated sites. The city has net financial assets at the end of 2021 of approximately 190 million, which is up from approximately 158 million at the end of 2020. Non-financial assets include the city's tangible capital assets, which represent expenditures on capital assets like land, buildings, machinery and equipment, infrastructure, and assets under construction, less the accumulated amortization taken to date. On the next page, on the consolidated statement of operations, the revenues include taxation, user fees, and service charges, transfer from the federal and provincial governments, and other revenue sources. The expenses are presented by functional area. However, in Schedule 2 to the financial statement, segmented information is provided, so you can see the composition of the expenses in these functional areas. I'd also draw attention to the budget column. As noted in the Treasurer's report in the agenda package, the budget is presented in accordance with PSAB in the consolidated financial statements. And as a result, it's been converted from the original balanced budget to a PSAB compliant budget, and details around this conversion are in note 23. And overall, the city had an annual surplus from operations in the year of approximately 65.7 million versus 22 million in 2020. The accompanying notes are an important component of the financial statements and provide disclosures regarding significant accounting policies and additional details related to the amounts presented in the financial statements. We'd like to thank the city staff and finance committee for their assistance and cooperation as part of our audit. Thank you.
Are you finished? Okay, thank you. That was great. We have about 45 seconds for any questions. I see no hands. You must have done an incredible good job. So there is Councillor Martin.
Thank you. In note 6 under investments, it lists provincial. Does that mean we've lent money to the province?
I will start, but I'll also defer to staff if they want to provide additional commentary, but it means, yes, you've purchased investments that are provincial in nature.
Oh. And do you know what interest rate those are at?
Not specifically for those. I don't know if staff can comment.
Okay.
Councillor Martin, we're just over 10 minutes, so what I'll do is, well, thank you both very much for your presentation, and we'll let you continue your question with staff providing an answer, if that's okay.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. So I need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Van Torborg, seconded by Councillor Martin. So I'll allow Councillor Martin to go first, then Councillor Carpenter.
Yeah, if staff could, if they could let me know what the interest rate is on the provincial bonds that we purchased.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so these are just provincial bonds. I am going to have to defer perhaps to Wanda or to Heather to provide the rate on that if that's available. If not, I'll be able to get that for you.
Okay.
So page 88 of 98.
Can we provide an answer, please?
Through the chair, the rate is 1.75.
Okay, thank you. And note 12, contaminated sites liability. There's been a big increase in the liability for Mohawk Lake. Can somebody give us a reason for that, or is that not available?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there was a revised liability calculation done. So there was environmental assessments and watershed studies done during the year in relation to Mohawk Lake, which provided better information to be able to update the liability associated with remediating that site.
Okay, I'm surprised to see it go up that much, because at the meetings we were told that the lake is improving over time. So that number should actually be going down, not tripling. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, the contaminated sites liability was the question that I had highlighted. But during presentations, they're limited to 10 minutes so that we can ask the delegation as well questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? None? Would you please take the vote?
Item 5.1.1, 2021 audited consolidated financial statements carries unanimously on a recorded vote. Those voting in favor, Councillor Martin, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sicoli, Councillor Utley, Councillor Carpenter, and Councillor Van Tilborg.
Thank you, Melanie. Councillor Martin, you have 5.1.2, 2021 year-end operating budget surplus, $2.978 million. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Part of the recommendation is that we establish a winter control reserve. I would have thought that's something that would have been in place. Is there a reason why there hasn't been one up until now?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe there's probably a long history about this. I do believe back in the early 2000s, the city did have one. I know that in 2009, there was significant updates in the introduction of finance policy 2 and the services that would be included in that. And I know at that time, it did not include a winter control reserve. So we have not had one for a number of years.
Okay, so I thought I remembered there being one before. I'm surprised that that didn't continue, because that is one that fluctuates annually, and it makes sense to have that there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we actually did have, remember we did have, as the treasurer's noted, that we did have that reserve fund. And I agree with Councillor Martin, that's one that needs the fluctuation. It goes up and down, and keep that in reserve. The question I have is that total amount that we're passing over to the reserve, that's actually the surplus from that group, right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Carpenter, that is correct. It's the surplus seen in the salt and sand and the contracted snow clearing
Yep.
accounts only, because when there's staff savings there for full-time, then those are still incurred by the organization, but through other business units like road. So it is just limited to those items that would fluctuate, which is the salt, sand, and the contracted services.
Thank you. And could, when this comes to council, could we update members of council what those reserve accounts that we're transferring the surplus to will, what the balances will be? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't see any hands up for questions. Melanie, would you take the vote, please?
Item 5.1.2, 2021 year-end operating budget surplus carries unanimously on a recorded vote. Those voting in favor, Councillor Martin, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sokoli, Councillor Utley, Councillor Carpenter, and Councillor Van Tilburg.
Thank you, Melanie. The next item, 5.2.2, Treasurer's Investment Report for 2021. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. There's a comment in here about the one Canadian equity portfolio. I thought that as a municipality, we were barred from owning equities as part of our investment strategy.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this was just introduced as a new opportunity to us last year. It is actually run by the Municipal Finance Officers Association, so it is completely compliant with the requirements with respect to investments in the Act.
Okay. Yeah, this one did very well for us by the looks of it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carpenter.
Yes, to staff, considering interest rates are going up in the near future, maybe not in the long-term future, are we looking at any reinvestments that we'll have to take advantage of the higher interest rates going forward?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, absolutely. So our investments are structured in a way where they're sort of laddered and there's regular maturities happening. So we're constantly looking for opportunities to be able to reinvest those funds in the best possible avenues that provide the best returns.
Does it look good for us going forward in the next couple of years? Because in the latter, are they sort of balanced off? So it's the same, almost the same amount every year that's turning over? We have a large amount at one point.
No, through you, Mr. Chair, we're definitely looking to smooth those maturities over time so we don't have huge fluctuations. We do need to look at our capital plan though and make some adjustments where necessary based on where that spending is going to happen. But we do have a regular maturity schedules that's happening at least through the first 5 years of our long-term plan.
Going forward, would it be difficult to, you got the terms down here, but actually having the maturity dates, would you be able to put them in there as well going forward?
Through you, Mr. Chair, on which could you?
So you got the investments, GICs, First Ontario Credit Union, for example, two-year term, but doesn't give us an idea when they mature.
All of the investments contained in Table 2 were what we purchased in 2001. So they're all just going to mature with 2 years or 3 years or 4 years time from 2001. So it's not a complete list of all the maturities or all the investments we currently hold. It's just summarizing for you there what was purchased in 2001 or 2021. I'm sorry.
I knew you meant 21. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? I see no hands up. Melanie, will you take the vote, please?
Item 5.2.2, Treasurer's Investment Report for 2021 carries unanimously on a recorded vote. Those voting in favor, Councillor Martin, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sokoli, Councillor Utley, Councillor Carpenter, and Councillor Van Tilburg.
Thank you very much. There are no resolutions, no notices of motion, and we have one adjournment. Where's that hammer?